Nations.com.
This is the Gridiron Guesser, the premier guesser in all of sports.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Guesser, where our focus today will be on guessing which football teams will be the best in the Southeastern Conference Western Division. Hey, if you love college football and you love predictions and picking the winners, this is the place for you. What sets the Gridiron Guesser apart is we're regular guys that understand being a football expert is really nothing more than a calculated guess. Our short videos tell you exactly what you need to know about college football and nothing you don't. What matters is what happens on the field. If you want recruiting news, NIL discussions, conference realignment talk, or those fluffy feel-good stories about your quarterback, go somewhere else. We talk about the action on the field and which teams are going to come out victorious on Saturdays. You may not like what we say about your favorite team, but we're going to say it anyway. There's nowhere else out there where you're going to find more accurate guessing on college football. And as the season gets started soon, we'll be giving you the most accurate guesses on who's going to win the biggest games each week. We don't promise you financial success from any of our videos, so don't take anything we say here seriously. Go ahead right now and subscribe to our channel and make sure to like the video. Even if you don't, I mean seriously, just do it. Just like the video. And then make sure to turn on your notifications so you won't miss out on any of our latest guesses. All right, let's go ahead and get started on today's show of the Gridiron Guesser. Let's take a look at the Southeastern Conference's Western Division. Of course, Alabama seems to be the annual odds-on favorite to win the division. But last year, LSU, under first-year coach Brian Kelly, was able to dethrone the Tide. Can they do it again? You bet your ass they can. But the question is, will they? And there's another team in the West that our calculated guess formula thinks can challenge both Alabama and LSU for that top spot, and it might just shock you. It's going to be a fun year in the SEC West, so let's get to it. The SEC West is full of intriguing teams and storylines. Of course, the tragic loss of Mike Leach at Mississippi State, Hugh Freeze returning to the SEC at Auburn. LSU and Alabama appear to be on a collision course for their meeting in November. Ole Miss looks to continue its winning ways under Lane Kiffin and have brought in Pete Golding from Alabama to strengthen the defense. There's new offensive and defensive coordinators at Arkansas, and we can't forget Bobby Petrino as the new offensive coordinator working with Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. Wow. The season hasn't even started yet, and there's just so much to consider. Let's start with quickly taking a look at what we guess will be the bottom of the SEC Western Division this season. Our guesses have Auburn and Mississippi State finishing at the bottom of the SEC West. Now, let's be clear. Here at the Gridiron Guesser, we still think there's a shot that both of these teams could make a bowl game. But the SEC West is stacked, and someone has to be at the bottom. Hugh Freeze will no doubt get Auburn rolling, and the Plains will be rocking again, but he's not quite got the roster to do it this year. Look for Auburn to have some ups and downs this season as Freeze and company work to establish the Tigers' new identity. We love the hire Auburn made here, and we think it will pay off sooner rather than later. As for total wins this season, we like the under for Auburn this season of winning less than 6.5 total games. As for Mississippi State, they returned prolific passer Will Rogers to an experienced offensive group. New head coach Zach Arnett was on Leach's staff as DC and served as the interim during the bowl game last season. He hired offensive coordinator Kevin Barbay, who will bring a little more run-oriented offense to Starkville. The schedule for the Bulldogs is tough, which is a big reason we don't think they're going to match last year's win total. The Bulldogs will be competitive, but we don't see that translating into a high number of wins. Our guess here at the Gridiron Guesser is another under for the Bulldogs of 6.5 total wins on the season. Now, let's take a look at our top 5 teams in the SEC West and find out which team will come out on top this season. Number 5, the Texas A&M Aggies. Oh yeah, we know. This will be the year. This year, it's going to be different. We've got Bobby f***ing Petrino. Really, though? Will it be different? Do we actually think Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino will be able to work well enough together to get results on the field? The Gridiron Guesser thinks it's going to be more of the same. So we say, until they prove us wrong, we're going with the Aggies to disappoint yet again. The problem is Jimbo, and we think the Aggies won't show improvement until they find a way to rid themselves of that mistake. Texas A&M will no doubt have another strong defense with so many returners. Offensively, the Aggies have nowhere to go but up from last year's horrendous performance. Petrino will help with the offensive efficiency and should help Connor Wegman to be a better overall quarterback. But something still seems off in College Station, whether it's the team chemistry, player troubles, or just the cringe traditions. We see another up-and-down season ahead for Texas A&M in 2023. The schedule is not favorable with road games at Tennessee, Ole Miss, and LSU. And home games with the Crimson Tide and the South Carolina Gamecocks will not be powder puff scrimmages either. Throw in the annual game against Arkansas and Arlington, and finding 4 conference wins for the Aggies is even a stretch. When all things are calculated, our guess is another disappointing season for the Aggies and a 3-5 record in the SEC. As for the regular season win totals, we're going to go with under 8 total wins this season for Texas A&M. Number 4, the Ole Miss Rebels. Has Lane Kiffin peaked already at Ole Miss? Well, maybe. Ole Miss returned 16 starters from last year's 8-5 team that finished the season on a 4-game losing streak. Quarterback Jackson Dart is back for a second season and has all-world Quashon Junkins behind him at tailback. He's a serious contender for the Heisman this year, and if Dart can open things up and give him softer fronts to run against, he may have an all-timer kind of season for Ole Miss. On defense, Lane Kiffin brought in Pete Golding as DC to tighten things up. The linebacker group is stacked with experience, while the secondary needs a total overhaul, and the defensive line has some holes to fill. If the defense improves from a year ago, the Rebels could blow by our expectations and move up the standings. Ole Miss faces Alabama and Georgia on the road, but there are opportunities for the Rebels to take advantage of. Our guess at the Gridiron Guesser is the Rebels managed to find 5 conference wins on their way to a 5-3 finish in the SEC, good enough for 4th place in the West. And we like the over for the Rebels of 7.5 wins on the regular season. We're down to our final 3 teams in the SEC West, and it's time to sound the alarm. The Gridiron Guesser is calling for a 3-way tie for the regular season title between the Alabama Crimson Tide, the Arkansas Razorbacks, and the LSU Tigers. So let's take a look at our 3 first-place finishers in the SEC West. The Alabama Crimson Tide. So you're telling me that for the second straight year, Alabama's not going to win the SEC West and Nick Saban is still the head coach? Are you f***ing kidding me? No, we're not. Here's the deal. We're not on the whole Nick Saban is old and has lost it and is on the way out. Anyone thinking that is just a total dumbass. But it's pretty clear at this point as we approach the season that Alabama does not have a quarterback. Sure, they have a few on the roster, but it really doesn't seem like any of them are very good. At best right now, they have game managers. And while Saban has won with game managers in the past, it's been a pretty long time. Alabama has had a great string of quarterbacks from McCarron, Hurts, Tua, Jones, and Young. But since his last game manager, college football has changed quite a bit. And bringing in offensive coordinator Tommy Rees from Notre Dame? That seems questionable at best. Alabama's still going to be very good, simply because Nick Saban's not going to let them be anything less than that. But the lack of a big-time signal caller is going to hurt the Tide in a couple of crucial games this season. The Tide have to replace Jamar Gibbs at tailback, which usually is not a problem for the Tide, who are strong in that position. And the receiving corps does return most of their production from a season ago, while adding a couple of transfers from the portal. Another cause for concern could be the offensive line, which only returns 2 starters. The question will be how that's going to affect the new quarterback. On defense, new defensive coordinator Kevin Steele will have to replace 6 starters from last year, including most of the linebacker group and Byron Young and DJ Dale up front. There's just a lot more unknowns with this Alabama team than we're used to, and the quarterback position is alarming. With all of these questions, we've guessed the Crimson Tide will finish with a 6-2 record in the SEC, which will be good enough for a first-place tie. And we're also going to take the under of 10.5 total regular season wins for the Tide. The Arkansas Razorbacks. How is a team with KJ Jefferson and Raheem Rocket Sanders in the backfield getting so little attention as we enter the 2023 season? Sure, last year was an underwhelming 7-6 season for the Hogs, full of ups and downs. The Hogs got off to a somewhat rocky 3-0 start and were dismantling Texas A&M for a quarter or so, until KJ Jefferson's ridiculous end-zone leap from the 3-yard line changed the course of the game and the season for the Razorbacks. KJ and the Hogs never really seemed to recover. Fast forward to this season, and the Hogs have a new offensive coordinator in Dan Enos and new co-defensive coordinators in Travis Williams and Marcus Woodson. Woodson was brought in for one reason. He's an excellent defensive mind and a top-level secondary coach. The Hogs were the worst team in all of FBS last season defending the pass. Coach Woodson will change that. Head coach Sam Pittman knew a change was needed on both sides of the ball after last season, and he got just what he needed when Kendall Briles and Barry Odom took jobs elsewhere. Quarterback KJ Jefferson needs to show improvement this season, specifically throwing the ball. He missed time last year due to injury, as all too often he was running downfield taking body blow after body blow. Our guess is Dan Enos is going to make that happen, and KJ will become a much better passer under the new system. Rocket Sanders is a beast at running back and has 3 or 4 other weapons around him to help carry the load. Arkansas is going to have to find some new faces to step up catching the ball, but the position seems loaded with talent as Arkansas has several young weapons and experienced transfers like Andrew Armstrong ready to fill the void. The Razorbacks only return 2 starting offensive linemen, but is there anyone else you'd rather have scouting and developing offensive linemen than Sam Pittman and offensive line coach Cody Kennedy? Our guess is the Hogs will be just fine up front. Defensively, Arkansas was a total disaster defending the pass last season, and gone are the 2 linebackers Drew Sanders and Bumper Poole. The Razorbacks hit the portal hard last spring and landed several big-time defensive backs to help tighten up the backside of the defense, while the Hogs looked to have a solid line up front to rush the passer and stop the run. The Hogs landed John Morgan from Pitt in the portal, and former LSU transfer Landon Jackson will be the leader of the group. Arkansas's schedule is, for once, not the most difficult in the country, but it's not full of cupcakes either. The Razorbacks have to travel to LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Florida. Call it a gut feeling, or a hunch, or maybe it's a wild guess because we're the Gridiron Guesser. Or maybe we just love the fact that Sam Pittman loves to drink cold beer. The Razorbacks seemed to stall last season, and we feel like a new offensive coordinator and direction on defense is going to be just what Sam Pittman needs to get this team back on track. We like the Hogs to raise some eyebrows this season and finish 6-2 in the SEC West and be tied for first place. We also like the Hogs to hit the over of 7 wins on the regular season. The LSU Tigers. Is LSU really good enough to finish in first again in the West for the 2nd straight year under Brian Kelly? Was last year a fluke? Remember, the Tigers trailed big in several games and were just a handful of plays away from being 7-5, not 9-3. The talent is there. The quarterback Jaden Daniels is awesome, both running and throwing the ball. Malik Neighbors is a huge threat at receiver. On defense, Harold Perkins and Mekhi Wingo return up front, along with Mason Smith, who was lost in the first game of the season against Florida State. The secondary loses most of its experience, but has some talented transfers coming in like Deuce Chestnut and Denver Harris, although it's not clear if he's part of the team anymore. Our guess is that LSU's defense will be even more stingy with points than they were last season. LSU has the pieces in place to roll to a second straight division championship and possibly more. Offensively, everything runs through Jaden Daniels. It's no secret he is their main weapon, whether running or throwing the ball. In 2022, the Tigers' offensive line was shaky for the first part of the season before finding the right combination of guys up front. Most of the offensive line returns, so Daniels and company should have more stability while working to pick apart opposing defenses. And LSU's schedule sets up very nicely. They kick off SEC play on the road at Mississippi State, then get Arkansas at home. This will be the first real conference test LSU faces, as Arkansas gave them everything they could handle last season without KJ Jefferson at quarterback. LSU will also have to travel to Ole Miss, Missouri, and Alabama for that big one in early November, but will be coming off a bye week heading into that matchup. Here at the Gridiron Guesser, we like how it sets up for the Tigers this season. Can Brian Kelly come through for a second straight year and lead the Tigers to a divisional championship? Well, our guess here at the Gridiron Guesser is they'll be good enough to tie for a first-place finish with a 6-2 record in the SEC. And as we look at the season total of wins for the Tigers, the Gridiron Guesser will take the under of 9.5 total wins for the Tigers this regular season. And that's going to do it for our guesses on how the SEC West will finish up this football season. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. As college football gets started, the Gridiron Guesser will be bringing you the most accurate guesses on the biggest games from around college football every week. Make sure you turn on your notifications so you don't miss the best guesses on all the best games. Hey, if you like football and food, don't forget to check out the Gridiron Grubmaster. There, you'll find the very best recipes for football season and every season. You can find the link below in our description. Thanks for joining us on the Gridiron Guesser. We'll see you next time.